Chicago's seen it all, but it's never experienced anything quite like this. A two-day racing and music festival featuring the Chainsmokers, Miranda Lambert, the Black Crowes, and Charlie Crockett. It's NASCAR in the streets of Chicago, and so much more. The Chicago Street Race Weekend. For tickets and experiences, visit NASCARChicago.com.
Roll Tide and welcome to this Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. This is Roger Hoover. Great to be with you in our studios in Tuscaloosa for a very baseball-heavy show today, as we're excited about the newest head coach of the Crimson Tide and the athletic department, Rob Vaughn, the new head coach of the Crimson Tide baseball team. He was introduced on Tuesday at the Mount Moore Athletic Complex, and we have interviews not just with Rob Vaughn, but also with the man that made the hire, Greg Byrne, the director of athletics, and then Chris Stewart, the baseball voice for us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network, will give his thoughts as well. So that's what's coming up on the show as we'll go through our headlines. Thanks to our friends at RJ Young. RJ Young is the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. Giving us a smart board to go through all the different headlines for today, and we will start first with baseball, talking about, again, the very good news about Rob Vaughn being named the head coach coming in from Maryland, the two-time Big Ten Coach of the Year. Of course, last weekend we were previewing the Winston-Salem Super Regional. Crimson Tide eventually went 0-2 against Wake Forest as the Demon Deacons move on to the College World Series for the first time since they won it all since 1955. A very tight game on Saturday, 5-4 before the Deacons ran away with the Sunday game, but still a lot to be proud of for the Crimson Tide as the season did come to a close in the Super Regionals. First time that's happened since 2010, and again, very exciting news. Once we got back on Monday, learned the announcement that Rob Vaughn comes to Alabama from Maryland, a two-time Big Ten Coach of the Year, back-to-back Big Ten championships, and he certainly has a strong vision for Alabama baseball that we'll hear about coming up in just a moment. Talking football. We're going to be talking a lot of football, getting ready for this season and getting ready for even the 2024 season, as last night on the SEC Network, the schedule was released, at least the matchups in SEC play, as we will once again have an 8-game schedule, even with Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC coming up in 2024. We know the home matchups, again, don't have the date for any of these times yet, but it will be Auburn, Georgia, Mizzou, and South Carolina coming here to Tuscaloosa. So how about Alabama against Georgia for the first time in Tuscaloosa since 2020? And then on the road, the Crimson Tide will go to some traditional rivals like LSU and Tennessee, but also get to go to Oklahoma for the first time since the early 2000s, and then a matchup as well in Nashville with Vanderbilt, and then the SEC championship game as well will be not based off the East or the West, but it will instead look like who is at the top two in the standings after all these 8 games are played, and then the SEC championship game in Atlanta. So a really fascinating schedule that Alabama is going to be playing so many teams that had been in the SEC East. Also Oklahoma, of course, joining the league, but you see some traditional matchups from the SEC West really go away as Alabama will be taking on Auburn and LSU, but Alabama will not be facing any of the schools from Mississippi, will not be facing the Arkansas Razorbacks as well, and also Texas A&M going off the schedule in 2024 after so many memorable matchups over the last few years. So it's going to look a little bit different in 2024, and who knows, we could still be looking at 9 games coming up in the future, but at least for 2024, 8 games. Some sad news to announce from Crimson Tide Athletics. Harvey Glantz, who is a very winning track and field coach here at the University of Alabama from 1997 to 2011. He passed away, unfortunately, earlier this week, so our thoughts and prayers with the family and also all the Alabama track and field alums for the loss of their coach, Harvey Glantz. On positive note, Montana Fouts, so we got some great news for her earlier in the week for the Crimson Tide softball team. She has been announced as the 2023 Honda Spirit Award winner for softball. So great to see that honor for Montana Fouts. And then for Rashinda Reed and the Crimson Tide volleyball team, we know the schedule is here, getting ready for Coach Reed and the Crimson Tide to return to Foster Auditorium this fall. You can check it out online at rolledtide.com. But for the rest of the show today, we are going to be talking about baseball, and we're going to be talking about Rob Vaughn, who was introduced on Tuesday as the newest head coach of the Crimson Tide baseball program. And after his press conference, we had an exclusive one-on-one conversation with the new head coach of the Crimson Tide, Rob Vaughn. Welcome back to Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. This is Roger Hoover. Now, pleased to be joined by the new baseball coach of the University of Alabama, Rob Vaughn. And Rob, Roll Tide, what's it been like the last 24 hours here in Tuscaloosa?
Ooh, I tell you what, it's been like drinking out of a fire hose right now, but it's been awesome. The people have been incredible. Everybody's been very open, honest, very friendly, helping us out. So it's been good. Been able to meet with the current players, which has been important, and get to know them a little bit and starting to build those relationships. So getting ready to get to work.
A lot of success for you at the University of Maryland. What attracted you to Alabama?
Tell you what, honestly, it's the people. From that first conversation I had with Greg, I knew he was different, and I knew he was real, he was authentic, he was open, and that started. And then I'll be honest with you, that 2023 team and what JJ and his staff did, I said, man, those are my type of people. Their culture's good, they play hard, they're gritty, they're tough. They just walked through the fire and came out the other end and are really paving the road. So I was really fired up to get here, and I'd say those things made this place really exciting for me.
What was it like getting to know Jason Jackson? Why was it important to keep him on this staff and now be the associate head coach?
It's funny. I actually, when I was the head coach of Maryland, I was looking for a pitching coach. I ended up hiring Corey Mascara, who's down at Wake Forest now, but I asked Chris Hart, one of my friends down at NC State, I said, Chris, I need a list of some really good pitching coaches. He said, well, Jason Jackson's the best one you're going to find, but he ain't coming to Maryland. And so Jason and I never really interacted there. And then, over the course of the last few weeks, we were able to connect. And obviously from afar, I was able to watch what he did and how he did things and knew he was special. And then you get on the phone with him, you find out why. I watched press conferences after Hoover, trying to get to know him, and he loves his players. And that comes through very clearly. He loves them. He cares about them on a deeper level than what they can do on the field. And I knew a guy like him, of his caliber, elite-level pitching coach. But I tell you what, that guy believes what I believe. And it was a no-brainer to try to do whatever we could to keep JJ part of what we're doing here.
You're a player at Kansas State, obviously some time at Maryland. Who have been some of the most impactful people on your baseball journey to where you are now at Alabama?
I think the first one is a guy named Andy Sawyers. He's the head coach at Southeast Missouri State. I'm not in coaching if it's not for him. He came in my senior year of college at Kansas State and was our hitting coach and loved us, challenged us, pushed us, believed in us, and told me, hey, Rob, you're going to coach one day. And at the same time, I'm sitting in my engineering class. I'm like, no. At the time, I'm going to be a big leaguer. I'm not doing this coaching thing. And he said, look, go play for a couple years. When you're done, come back. And I did. And I called him about a year and a half in and said, hey, Coach, you got a position. I'm ready to come back. And, then John Sheff gave me an opportunity. I was 25, probably not prepared to go be a recruiting coordinator, and he tossed me the keys and said, go do it, and believed in me when not many people did. And so those two guys just really paved the road for me as I get here. And then there's too many players to name. I mean, we are who we are because of the kids we get to coach every day. And I've coached some really, really special ones in my day. And, again, too many to probably to name here, but they're littered with special people and really talented players along the way.
So now as a head coach at Alabama, what do you want this program to be built on?
I mean, there's two things you're going to hear us talk about all the time, and that's culture and development, is building a culture that's real. I think a lot of people throw around that word very easily, but we're going to love each other. We're going to care about each other. We're going to play for each other. We're going to build these young people into unbelievable husbands and fathers one day, and we're going to help them become leaders. And that's one thing that I think, I've seen it kind of around town, where legends are made. I've seen that 100 times walking around town, and I tell you what, that's what we're going to do here. We're going to build those things, and we're going to help these kids see what they're capable of. That's what Coach Sawyers did for me back in 2009, and that's what I want to do for these kids. And I tell you what, I'm excited to get started on it.
I know you're a big college football fan. We'll let you go on this. What was it like getting to meet Coach Saban for the first time, and how fired up are you for being in Bryant-Denny Stadium for some football games this year, showing off Alabama to some recruits?
Oh, good gracious. I know Greg came in, he grabbed me, he said, hey, we're going to go meet the football coach. And I have a hat on. I'm like about to pass out, and Coach Saban was awesome. I mean, just was very impressive, super opening. He basically told me, anything I can do to help, come see me. If there's anything I can do for recruiting, come let me help you. Just was open, was great. And I'll tell you what, I don't think I've stopped shaking since I walked out of his office. That's one of the legends, not of college coaching, but of any coach of all time. And to get to meet him and kind of come to the grips that we're going to be working alongside each other is not hit me yet. So excited to do that, excited to get out to some football games this fall and see what it's all about down here.
Well, we're excited you're here. Coach Vaughn, thank you so much for joining us. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, and NASCAR is taking racing to the next level this summer with a two-day racing and music festival. The Chicago Street Race Weekend is the can't-miss event of the summer. From the world-class racing at Grant Park to the music festival featuring the Chainsmokers, Miranda Lambert, the Black Crowes, and Charlie Crockett, there is something for everyone to enjoy. Check this once-in-a-lifetime event off your bucket list and lock in your tickets today at NASCARchicago.com. Well, thanks to Rob Vaughn for joining us. Of course, he's the new baseball coach at Alabama. The man that made that hire is the director of athletics, Greg Byrne, and we always have Greg join us here on Crimson Drive once a month to talk about the latest in Alabama athletics, and we were able to catch up with him for just a few moments, mostly about this baseball hire. It's really an exciting day to introduce Rob Vaughn as the new coach of the Crimson Tide. Here's our conversation with Greg Byrne. This is Roger Hoover. Now, pleased to be joined by the Director of Athletics for the University of Alabama, Greg Byrne. And Greg, roll tide, and it's an exciting day here at Alabama as we get to introduce a new baseball coach, Rob Vaughn.
Yeah, it is an exciting day. Obviously, our season ended not the way we wanted it to, but we finished so strong, and the kids were so incredible, and JJ and the staff did a wonderful job riding the roller coaster we were on, and so during the end of the season, obviously, was working on a coaching search as well, and met with Rob a few weeks ago in Omaha, actually, and just, man, using a baseball terminology, the first time we were together, he knocked it out of the park. And probably after about 5 to 10 minutes, I'm like, I like this guy. I'd really like to see if this thing could work out. And when I talk to our kids on our team, getting input from them, one of the things they said is they want to make sure they have somebody that cares about them just as much as a person as a baseball player, and it was very obvious the more I dug into Rob and did my research on him and talked to people around him that was the case. And so we're really excited what he brings, his energy, his enthusiasm, his knowledge of the game. And I think he's going to relate very well to our kids, recruit at a high level, and also put a really good product out on the field.
We always hear about coaches kind of pitching their plan for what they want their program to look like when they're meeting with athletic directors. What was it specific about the plan that Coach Vaughn had for this Alabama team? He
talked as much about culture within the program as anything else. And one of the things he talked about was that there's going to – and I'm going to let him share the details of it when it's time. But he has the captain wear number 3. And it's because basically the 3 pillars of the program, and I'll let him go more into detail of what those are. But I was like, I've been around this a long time, and I've never really heard that before. I thought that was unique. And he was giving me the examples of the kids who wore that, what they're doing now. Like one of them's an Army Ranger. He mentioned that at his press conference. And it doesn't always go to the best player on the team. It goes to the best leader on the team. And there were things just like that. I'm like, that's a different approach. The dude's only 35, and he's thinking along lines that not everybody else is doing. So I thought he had such a positive way about him. And one of the things I say sometimes to our entire department, positive attitude, energy, enthusiasm, it's contagious, just like a negative attitude. Lack of enthusiasm is contagious too. And I want to make sure we have coaches that are on the right side of that.
And also Jason Jackson, part of the staff. He was the interim head coach throughout May and the postseason. Why was it important to make sure he's included on this coaching staff?
Well, JJ did such a good job during his entire time here at Alabama and took over under trying times and just really stabilized the ship. And with his knowledge as a coach, his recruiting ties throughout the Southeast as well as the country, and the credibility that he continues to bring for us, I thought was really important. He and his family really love Tuscaloosa. They love our university and these kids, and I was like, if we can find a way to make sure that he's a part of it as well. And Rob was the first one that brought it up to me. He said, man, if there's a way to keep JJ, I'd love that to be the case. And I said, well, let's see if we can do that, and we did.
It's a really exciting day here at Alabama. Again, Rob Vaughn introduces the new head baseball coach. Greg, thank you so much for joining us. Roll Tide.
Thanks, Roger. Roll Tide.
Chicago's seen it all, but it's never experienced anything quite like this. The Chicago Street Race Weekend. For tickets and experiences, visit NASCARchicago.com.
We continue on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Now with a conversation with my broadcast partner for Crimson Tide Baseball, the longtime baseball voice of Alabama, and that is Chris Stewart. He was the MC for the press conference on Tuesday as Alabama introduced Rob Vaughn to the media and to Alabama fans, and he joined us right after the press conference to share some of what he learned about Coach Vaughn and also where this Alabama baseball program is headed next. Baseball voice for a long time, and now you get to meet the newest head coach of the Crimson Tide in Rob Vaughn. Just roll tide. It's a special day here at Alabama.
It is, except when I realize he's about 20 years younger than I am, and then all of a sudden it's a kick to the gut. But it's awesome to have him here. Love the things that he said. Great to meet his family and hearing all the things about him and who he's about. I think, Roger, we're both also extremely excited that Jason Jackson's still going to be here and a major part of this program because of the respect we have for him. So it is a great day. It's a great day for the Tide.
It certainly is, and he talked about the foundation that this 2023 team is leaving behind. We got to experience it over the last few months. Just how do you feel like you'll remember this team the most?
Incredibly special because of the obvious adversity. But if you pull that out, and it's very tough to do that, but if you pull that part out of the equation and you just look at what they did, how they competed, the way they played, what they accomplished. I mean, the fact that, we've not been to a super regional since 2010, and they were able to get there. That in and of itself is huge, to get a chance to play well enough in the course of the year that you could host a super for the first time since '06. I mean, those things stand out, and then you put it within the spectrum of what they dealt with in the potential derailing of the year 6 weeks ago, but that didn't happen. If anything, they circled the wagons even more, and it makes you even more appreciative of who they were as people and what they were as ball players to not just keep it intact, but to take it to a place we hadn't been in a long time.
One of those places was here for the postseason.
Right.
We are very glad to have that. Will the Tuscaloosa Regional go down as some of your favorite memories at this ballpark?
Yeah, I think just getting the opportunity to host it was huge. Walking out at 1 o'clock at night was not all that exciting, but it was great to walk out as a winner, to see the fan base turn out. I've been telling the staff, I promise you, I've seen it with my own eyes. When you get a chance to host, they're going to be hanging from the light post, and we're real close to that. It was fantastic. The crowds were great, and especially in light of the weather issues we had that pushed back the start times. It was terrific to see them turn out in the numbers they did, to be as supportive as they were, because that particular group of players and coaches deserved it.
They certainly do, and now we get to start building on that foundation to what we hope will be a very successful tenure for Coach Vaughn here in Tuscaloosa. In his opening remarks, what impressed you the most about him?
I think his clear plan, confidence, belief in himself, but also his respect for what has been done and the understanding that this is not something that needs to be totally rebuilt. You got to find a way to keep the momentum going, but also get it to a place beyond what we saw, and not just 16 and 14. Even though that's a great accomplishment relative to where we've been, that's not the goal at Alabama. It's beyond that, and to get the help from the administration to put things in place where you can achieve that goal, I think is going to be fun to watch. So his vision, his enthusiasm were, I think, extremely exciting for where we're going.
Absolutely. So where we're going next, the offseason really for Alabama athletics. What's next for Chris Stewart over the next few weeks?
Losing on the golf course to my 12-year-old quite frequently, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we're looking forward to everything ramping back up later in the summer and in the fall. Chris, you do such a great job for us. Just thank you for your time. Roll Tide.
Thank you, partner. Appreciate you.
Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, and don't miss NASCAR's first ever street race. The Chicago Street Race Weekend is the can't-miss event of the summer. Experience a 2-day NASCAR racing and music festival in the heart of Chicago. Lock in your tickets today at NASCARchicago.com. That's going to wrap up this edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. This is normally the time of the show we point to the pickles and tell you all about the Wickles Weekend Update. Again, brought to you by Wickles Pickles. They are wickedly delicious. Check them out at WicklesPickles.com. And we have now entered into the part of the year where we don't have any broadcast this weekend to promote. But a couple of programming notes for us. We will continue with Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, over the next 2 weeks at Thursdays, streaming live at 2 p.m. here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network social media channels, available always on demand as well. Some of the interviews on our YouTube channel, even separately, or on the Alabama Insider podcast. Again, we're going to have that for you over the next 2 weeks coming up. A lot of football conversation as we're getting closer to SEC Media Days. Speaking of Media Days, coming up in July for this show, just a couple of other programming notes. We will take a 2-week break, and then after we're rested and refreshed, we will come back from Nashville with some content from SEC Media Days like we've done over the last couple of years. and we will have Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR streaming live once a week, getting ready for the first game against Middle Tennessee, and then we will have twice a week programming on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 o'clock here for all football game weeks. So we're excited about what's coming up later this year, but as part of our Wickles Weekend Update, again, wanted to remind you of the schedule for Crimson Drive. Again, we'll have 2 more shows coming up here in the month of June before we take a little bit of a vacation. Then it's time to really talk football because the 2023 season is just around the corner. Special thanks to all the guests we were able to be joined by in person on Tuesday at the Malmore Athletic Complex. New baseball head coach Rob Vaughn, the director of athletics Greg Byrne, as well as Chris Stewart for his observations on Alabama baseball. Thanks to Ethan Carabin, who shot and edited and put this entire show together for today. Thanks to Ethan for his hard work, and thanks to all of you for watching this edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. From Tuscaloosa, this is Roger Hoover signing off, saying Roll Tide, have a great weekend.